This is always the hardest question for me to answer because I have such a weird job.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Product and Cake here in season 4, where we discover great people across the product tech universe. And as always, my co-host is here, Gonche. Welcome in our studio.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for having me again in our virtual recording studio. I just listened to our
great to have you.
Yeah, I just listened to our first episode ever. Just the first few seconds, I wanted to see how we started it. And you say, hey, welcome, Goncha. And I say, hey, thanks for having me. And I say, you're the co-host. You need to be here every time from now on. I was like, oh, okay, sorry, I forgot. So again, still, thank you for having me. Today, beside me, we have another amazing guest, Kurtis.
Yes, Kurtis is here.
Thank you for having me.
It is so great to have you. I am so excited because you are basically the one who were responsible. You tell us more about that, but you were responsible for the growth of a very fantastic app I'm a huge fan of. It is called Bunch. It gives you leadership trainings, and I have to say it is one of the very, very low number of apps that is in the front screen of my phone since years. So we want to discover how you made that, and we also want to learn from your wisdom. So thank you very much for joining. But before we kick off all of that, let us start with a nice check-in question. Even though this question is a little bit dangerous if you try it with your team, but we love the danger, right? So Kurtis, where would you like to be if you weren't here, and why?
Here with you today.
Yeah, here in this virtual recording studio.
There is nowhere I'd rather be, Paul and Goncha.
Aww. That's so sweet.
But if I weren't here, I would probably be buried in Amplitude somewhere analyzing data.
Oh wow.
What about you, Goncha?
Now I need to say also, there's no place I'd rather be, but and I don't know. Berlin started today with very foggy and gray and not nice looking weather, but right now it's cloudy and nice. So maybe outside. And I'm recently trying to relearn skating mainly. So I used to do inline skating growing up, but now I'm trying roller blades. So the ones that have these 4 wheels. And maybe outside in the street, trying my new roller technique.
Nice.
How about you? What would you want to do?
Obviously, I also enjoy being here a lot. But beside that, I would be maybe in the garden because spring is coming. And I have this ongoing project of planting grass, what is quite difficult with kids because I stand at the side and yell, don't go on the grass. And they just want to play. So that is difficult. I just mentioned that it's a dangerous question because if you are with your team, right, and you are here supposed to stay 8 hours at work or in remote work, then sometimes you trigger too much thought with that question. What other nice places are out there? But I'm super happy that we are here in this awesome recording studio.
Yeah, exactly. Same here.
Very nice. I like to hear about the hobbies as well. These the gardening and the roller skating. I recently tried a new hobby as well, which was pretty adventurous for me. I picked up a little bit of boxing, just for staying fit, and I can confirm it is very exhausting. It's fit for purpose for my goal anyway of getting some exercise, but I don't think I'm going to be in the ring anytime soon.
Oh, nice. Interesting. I've never tried it, but I should give it a go. Maybe try once and then see if it sticks. But Kurtis, before we start and deep dive in all of your experiences and all of the things that you can share with us today, for those who don't know you a little bit, would you explain your job in a few sentences?
this is always the hardest question for me to answer because I have such a weird job. So I actually am freelance right now, and my primary focus is actually with the language learning app Babbel. So I have something close to a full-time role with Babbel as a freelancer, working in their the team that is responsible for onboarding in the mobile app. So my team is working on the onboarding and the first paywall in both iOS and Android, which is really exciting because it's obviously quite a large popular app. So there's a lot of users, there's a lot of cool experiments we get to run, cool data that we get to look at. Alongside that, I have a couple of fractional or advisory roles. So one is with Slides AI, which is a extension for Google Slides that is very, very cool. It's basically a way to create presentation slides with AI, but have it basically turn into a Google Slides presentation as opposed to a separate other editor that you need to learn how to use. So that's been really fun. It's sort of an indie hacker type project. So it's been really cool to be a part of that. And then I've also been working with Prematch, which is a really, really exciting company based in Cologne and Berlin. It's a startup for soccer players, and they have created an app for amateur soccer players that helps them really kind of feel like a pro. So as an amateur soccer player, you get to see your match stats, the league standings, your player profile. For players, they get a market value that shows kind of how good they are at I should say football, not soccer. Talking to a couple of folks in Europe here, but I hope you'll forgive me. I'm in Vancouver now, so I'm already adapting.
Yeah, the AI will sort out that for us. Interesting. So what is your favorite team size, or maybe the team at Babbel? Can you quantify it a little bit so we get an idea of how many people does a how is it called, growth strategy advisor needs?
I think it depends a lot. I tend to really enjoy working in small teams. So in my work with Slides AI, for example, I'm kind of mostly working with one or two other people. At Prematch, I'm usually working with sort of, 3 or 4. And at Babbel, even though Babbel is several hundred people, the direct team that I work with is actually just a handful of people. So we have kind of a nice little experiment squad where we have, me kind of serving the role of product manager. We have an iOS engineer. We have an Android engineer. We have one engineering manager. We have, a designer. So we kind of have these cross-functional pods that we work with, but they're very small, very lean. Yeah, I think at the biggest our team ever was still under 10 people.
Oh, wow. Interesting. That's quite small for trying to also grow a product, grow the value of the product that you're releasing to the market. I wonder how you ended up here. So what led you to join all of these interesting product and tech products? How did you end up?
Sheer accident, I would say. I remember when I first kind of entered the tech world, I had just graduated university and I was having a bit of an existential crisis because I think when I went to university, I had the idea that maybe I'd go into finance or something. I don't know why I thought that was a good fit for me because it's hard to imagine that I really would have enjoyed that world. But yeah, I was checking out just different jobs online. This was actually right after this was 2012. So the economy was still kind of in a weird state post financial crisis. I had done an exchange semester in Germany and just had this kind of like midnight idea. Wouldn't it be cool to look at some jobs in Germany, and maybe I could work for like a startup in Berlin or something. And I came across a founder who was looking to hire the first non-technical full-time employee, I believe, at the time for a really small startup called iQuant. So this was one of the first kind of, let's say, commercially viable AI companies in Europe, I think. So really specific niche application. Basically, they were working with user research data and building predictive models with that data. So doing things like trying to build a model for predictive eye tracking or other similar things. So like analyzing a web design and rating how clear the design is or if it's too cluttered and things like this. So they were kind of getting started, seeing some traction and looking for a native English speaker to help them grow. And I ended up kind of becoming kind of the generalist, kind of all things go to market for that company. It was a really interesting kind of happenstance that, our customers often tended to be UX researchers, UX designers, conversion rate optimization, teams, looking to, kind of leverage these insights from our AI to improve their mostly web designs, but sometimes it was, ads or even shelf design, for products on shelves and things. So yeah, that's how I kind of got into tech. I was there for 6 years, actually. We ended up selling the company. Afterwards, I thought it would be interesting to sort of stay in that kind of AI space, but maybe try out a different application of it. And stumbled across Bunch, which at the time was a really, in a really interesting phase as well, because they were kind of in the middle of a pivot from initially having built a tool for employee surveys, and then at the time was trying to radically change their kind of product. And there was several iterations, actually. Bunch ended up becoming a very, very fascinating kind of product discovery factory for a little while we were trying to kind of figure out which direction to go. So I initially joined that team pretty much to lead sales for this new product they were about to launch. But then shortly after ended up pivoting again. And just by chance, the new problem that we decided we wanted to try and solve was this you could call it leadership coaching. So we saw that there were often, especially at that time, a lot of newer managers being promoted to leadership roles where they didn't necessarily feel super comfortable with it. We're still trying to kind of understand what is the role, how do I succeed in this type of role, what do I actually need to do, and overcome just the insecurity of being in a leadership role for the first time. And so we came up with this idea to build an AI leadership coach. And we thought, what, the best way for this to work would actually be if it's sort of feels like a personal product, not a business product, something that you can actually use on your phone. And that's how we ended up building a mobile app. And suddenly we didn't need a sales team anymore, and I had to find a new a new role for myself. And that's how I kind of fluked into product and product growth.
Nice.
That very impressive story. So now your title or your LinkedIn subtitle says early stage startup growth expert. What would you say is missing in a team when there are maybe 2 or 3 engineers, a product manager, a designer? And then what does that team missing? Why should they hire you or have a growth person in that team?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I think it depends a lot on the individual context of the company. I don't think, I'm not super dogmatic about this. I don't necessarily think that there needs to be a growth specialist in every team. What I have found is kind of a strength of mine, and that has proven helpful for companies in certain positions and stages, is being able to kind of find where there's leverage. So, figuring out, where do we actually have an opportunity to really improve things? And how can we then, take like a strategic approach to testing and getting kind of, finding the solutions that we're looking for, trying to figure out how to make it work. So, yeah, I think not all teams need a growth person. I also think growth as a field, it's very ambiguous. It's hard to kind of grasp. It means different things to different people. So, it's a tough question to answer, but it's an interesting one to explore.
Yeah. So what you said would to identify where to grow or what the data tries to tell us, or like setting up experiments. It's maybe also something I could expect from the product manager, isn't it? Or do you have a...
Of course, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So that's basically what exactly my role is at Babbel. Is I'm a product manager. In the Slides AI example is maybe a good one though. So in the case of Slides AI, they don't actually have a dedicated product manager role. So it's a small company, still kind of still very much founder led. And the founder doesn't have a lot of background in growth. Again, growth being kind of just this very holistic intersection of like marketing, monetization strategy, products. It means different things in different companies, but yeah. So in that case, I've sort of been working with him as an advisor on where do we see the biggest opportunities to increase the metric we care about. So in that case right now, we ended up focusing a lot on retention. We ended up focusing then after retention a lot on monetization. So again, these are very much kind of product manager type topics as well. So they're very similar.
Yeah. But maybe especially if you set up kind of a team, or your team have already proven some traction, and then bringing someone to the team who's really dedicated to accelerate that instead of falling into endless sprint plannings and discussions about backlog prioritization could be beneficial, I guess. Is there maybe a common misconception people have about what you do?
Definitely. So I think a lot of people assume that growth means marketing. And I think a lot of people also assume, and again, it just depends which industry you come from, I think. A lot of people think that growth means sales. So I often kind of get mistaken for a marketer or a salesperson. It's very understandable, honestly. Like it's, in many industries, that's just the way it is. So, it makes for an interesting, life on LinkedIn, because in the same day, I might get, I might be seeing, having people reach out about a head of sales job, and a marketing role. And yeah, obviously I haven't worked in sales in a long, long time. And, while marketing has kind of certainly been part of my world, especially at Bunch, when I was there, it's obviously its own specialist field.
Yeah, I think that's a good problem to have, to be contacted by multiple companies in different areas for a specific role. That's a really good.
I just realized that sounded pretty weird, right? That's like a strange humble brag.
Yeah, I get so many requests every day, even for a sales job.
To be fair, I don't get that many.
I'm very sure that you do, and I'm very sure that in the in the last few years, the market also has shifted slightly. So last year versus now, the number of messages in LinkedIn is very, very different. Right now, the messages are more like, hey, I am looking for an open role. Do you happen to have a role in your company? Or I'm a recruiter representing these people. And previously it was more like, hey, do you want $1 billion salary and working for us? But yeah, that's a great problem to have in general. And looking at the flip side of that, what's the biggest challenge you're tackling right now?
Would you say career-wise, or do you mean like within one of my roles, specific roles?
I would consider both, because also career-wise, if you're having a challenge that is part of your role as a growth expert or a product manager. And that's what I'm most interested in.
So I think my career so far has led me to a place of really being quite a generalist. And being a generalist is kind of a double-edged sword in a lot of ways. So I think in many ways, it's kind of my strength is to be able to kind of holistically look at a product, look at a business, and kind of get a good sense for what makes it tick. But the other side of that is not having like the super deep expertise in specific areas. And so one of the just a funny example is when I think about my work as a product manager. I'm actually really bad at a lot of the things that you kind of associate with product management. Like, you should see me try and use Jira. I'm awful.
I have a hard time finding anyone. I mean, just one person, but beside that one person, I don't know anyone who likes using Jira. I don't know how that company is still working, but it is. I don't think that's not on you.
But I think it is an example, though, of the kind of the generalist tension a little bit. I also, am certainly not deeply technical either, and I think that's one thing that on a day-to-day basis is sort of like one of the downsides of this kind of generalist path that I've pursued so far. For my career as well, I think it's an interesting one where there are different paths that I could go, different ways that I could go in terms of like, what type of projects do I want to take on? What types of company do I want to work with? So that's also a bit of a challenge of like, just having done a little bit of everything. And, it feels a little bit like, everything is an option, but that's not always a good thing.
And maybe that is very similar to some challenges in your job, right? If you jump into a new team and basically more or less everything is possible, then you also need to find some ways on, okay, what experiment should we do next? And in this ocean of options, where's the next step?
Totally. And connected to this, actually, I'll share one more specific challenge I face, and I'll use Babbel as an example, because at Babbel, it's a more mature company. You have, even though the direct team that I'm working with is quite small, it's several hundred people that are working on this product. And one thing that I struggled with coming from small startups is, as a generalist, I want to do everything. I'm used to, doing the initial research and the data analysis. Well, guess what? At Babbel, we have data analysts. I'm used to doing user interviews myself. Well, there's actually a user research team at Babbel that's supposed to do that. We have, I'm used to working very closely with designers and writing all the copy, for example, myself for a lot of, new experiences or flows that we're working on. At Bunch, I was kind of chief copywriter, for anything in the app. Well, we have, content designers at Babbel, which is very cool. And so on. So I think that's actually an interesting challenge that I've faced more recently in kind of working with a more mature product, that I have to sort of let go of some of these things that I'm used to having total control of.
And usually these kind of people are not so happy if you as a generalist step in and say, hey, I did some data analysis and I've wrote some copies and here, take it or do something with it. I know that situation very well. I run into some similar ones. Especially when now we all have our personal sidekick that promise us to do everything we want, talking about the AI thingy. And how is AI? I mean, you were in contact with AI much longer than all of us, most likely, because at Punch that was this AI leadership coach. But how did AI change your role now in, let's say, in the last year?
Oh, that's a big one. It's completely changed the way I work, I think. It sounds a little bit cliche, but I use AI as a sparring partner for almost everything. So it's not that I necessarily use it all day, but a lot of those, things that I have to work on, like a project I'll have to work on where I'm feeling a little bit stuck, I often turn to AI for help for those situations. I've used AI to help me come up with structures for projects. I've used it to design workshops. I've used it to design even new onboarding flow opportunities, and so on. So I think it's for me been quite a useful. I still think sparring partner is probably the best way to put it. It's a way to kind of explore different options. And ultimately I find I'll always kind of want to make the decision myself, and I might not actually follow what the AI suggests, but it helps me to kind of think about things more clearly, and it helps me to kind of get started. It's one of those things. I remember there's always this story of like, can't remember which company it was. It might have been like Constant Contact or one of those like early email marketing tools, where there was this story, or maybe it was MailChimp, this story about how, if you give people a blank page, they'll have a much harder time than if you give them a bad template. Because at least with the bad template, they'll look at it and go, oh no, but that's not what I wanted to say. And then they can edit it from there, which is actually easier to do, funny enough, than when you just sort of stare at the blank screen and you're like, oh, where do I even start? So that's kind of how I use AI, I think, on a day-to-day basis. At Bunch as well, I used to use it a lot. I was a bit more involved in the marketing side back then. So, we would use that to come up with ideas for subject lines, podcast titles. Actually, maybe that's a good tip for you. Probably you've already started doing that, using it to generate title ideas for podcast episodes.
Yep. I think it's been a while since we do this, right? Since ChatGPT 3, we are using AI titles.
In the beginning, I saw a massive drop in traction with these AI titles because they were read all the same and all very somehow generic. I mean, they read good on the first sight, but they were really not so interesting. Then I stopped it for a while, but today I upload the transcript of an episode and it gives me all the texts about it. It's quite impressive.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I do remember back then it was a lot of like, I think about the product and cake example, it would be something like, unleashing the power of product management or something like that would be the type of
we had that.
you get from it. But.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's that beside the fact that how it improved and elevated the value that it could create for us, shows the different use cases. And I really, it's kind of an overrated idea at the moment that there are all of these AI-based startups popping everywhere. And I really feel at this point it's like a popcorn. Like it's just bloop, 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 bloop. Newest AI-based startup is happening in one side of the corner of the country or the world. Do you happen to have an overrated or underrated way that you currently use AI? Something you already mentioned that you use as a spearing partner and giving you the what we in German we call Männliche Grundlage, so the basis for discussion. My favorite German word. And but what else? What other ideas, overrated ideas and underrated ideas do you have?
Oh, that's a really tricky one. I think underrated is definitely like workshop design. I found it so helpful. I think that's really, really been a cool one. Overrated. I think it really depends on what your expectations are, but I have never really found a lot of value in the kind of, these new features where it's like AI will write a document for you. Or I think about the feature like in Notion where it's like, ask AI to kind of write your first draft for you. For some reason, when it comes to like written text, I've only ever really found it good for generating like a huge amount of options. I've never really that happy with AI like documents that are text driven. I always find them still kind of a bit generic. So for example, AI articles, which I think was something I was really excited about initially, like, oh wow, think about the amazing power of using AI to write articles, but they still don't read quite the same.
I had exactly that a while ago when I wanted to present a new product strategy, and I let it create all the slides. I read roughly through it and I thought, okay, damn it reads like in the book. I'm the best product strategist ever. Then I presented it to the management team and I realized, oh, damn it does not fit to our case. It reads well, it sounds reasonable, but not in our situation. All the slight differences.
And this has been a really interesting, from like a product standpoint, really interesting aspect of working on Slides AI, because it is basically the problem they're trying to solve is that creating the slide deck, like getting started with a presentation, is really hard. And we also see there are lots of people out there who, they have prepared content. They know the content extremely well. They know what they want to talk about, but like creating a deck for it is kind of a painful process. And we've been working very much on that thing of kind of like, how do we help get people to that first draft? But it's still, so far, it's a first draft. You still need to do a lot of kind of manual refinement for some of these things. That I don't know if that'll change at some point. It gets so good that you click a button and then you can kind of just call it done. But as of today, I would say there's still a lot of individual review needed for any AI produced content.
Yeah, and I think it is a very good thing when we all appreciate that we don't need to start from the blank slide anymore, but we get a pretty good template, not the bad template, already a pretty good one, but it is still work on our side to do. And it is important to not step into that thinking of, oh, look, I got this super basic generic template. AI is shit at all. I will do it like I did the last 10 years also, right? But embracing that and be happy about that suggestion and work with that one, because we all need to learn how to use that new tools, because however they will evolve, they will not go away anymore. And learning is super important. Is there anything, or maybe is there one thing you wish you had learned earlier in your career?
One thing that I wished that I learned earlier in my career. I think what I would have loved to get into earlier in my career is uh, like more detailed data analysis. I think over time I've gotten more and more comfortable with like digging into data myself and not relying on someone else to kind of pull it and analyze it ahead of time. I have become kind of, I think, quite proficient with, working with tools like Amplitude and, Post-Hog. I'm using a lot, StatSig a lot for A/B testing and things. But one of those skills that I still don't have that I kind of wish that, I had, maybe picked up earlier in my career is, like SQL. Because I currently am very reliant on the tools.
Interesting. Yeah, the first time I learned SQL, because again, after a while, I didn't use it. I forgot it and I had to learn it again. So the first time I learned it, it just broadened my perspective. I was like, oh my God, I can do everything I want in the world. And I was at that time working for a market research company. So we had a lot of data. And it was amazing. I loved it. I queried so many weird, random correlation things. Loved it. Yeah. And now I want to ask you a little about some rapid fire product dilemmas. So it's a game that we play. It's a yay or nay game. There are some not so much controversial, but there are some statements that I will share. And then if you agree with them, you can say yay. And if you don't agree, you can say nay. Are you ready?
I like this. I'm ready.
Nice. Good. All right. So the success of a feature should be determined within the first month of the launch.
Nay. Disagree.
All right. Why?
So there are, I think, many cases where the core, it's so hard to do this without an example. So I think there are a lot of cases where the core job of a feature is meant to enhance long-term engagement and retention. And I think there are many cases where you can't actually see for sure whether or not you've moved the needle on the thing you're trying to move the needle on. Until you have a longer time frame. Like there are some things, for example, that might work short term but don't work long term. So interesting dilemmas, obviously, because for us as product people, we need to make decisions. We can't just kind of leave things open forever.
Exactly, especially when it's time for A/B tests.
Yeah, for A/B tests, it's a very tricky one. We have interesting cases like this with Babbel, where we're moving more and more towards looking at like customer lifetime value as a metric that we work with for for experiments and things. For many years, you have to kind of, up until now, we've kind of had to have some kind of proxy to look at, because you can't just leave the A/B test on forever.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's tricky, but I have worked on some like very foundational use cases and habit loops for products where it wasn't necessarily obvious whether it was a success or failure within a month. So that's why I'm saying nay.
Yeah. And there are some lagging metrics that you only get the results at a year later. There are also sometimes the novelty effect of the product, either on a positive side or negative side. We are not necessarily loving change. So yeah, I fully agree with the nay. So the second segment. The team follows a build fast and ask for forgiveness later approach.
Oh, I love this. Yay. I think I'm maybe a little bit too far on this side of the equation sometimes. But having worked in startups so long, this is kind of almost ingrained in how I think about doing product work. I definitely think it's great to just speed of learning is everything. And if you are too careful about shipping things, you just can't learn as fast. And then, over a longer time period, I think I believe, I can't prove, but I believe that you end up with worse results if you're not shipping. And in that way, it's kind of funny, but I would rather be kind of, maybe shipping things that we probably shouldn't have shipped, or, maybe running into bugs or whatever other issues than just kind of always sitting and waiting.
I agree in general, but I really want to mention the tech perspective on that, because you should give the engineers time to build a deployment pipeline where they are happy to deploy. I think it's a good measurement if your engineering team is saying, no, we will not deploy on Friday because it could cost our weekend. Then you have a massive problem, because maybe you shipped a feature and you said, oh, damn it, that was a mistake. I want to roll back. And then every engineer is saying, no, that is too dangerous to deploy a new version right now. Then there is an issue. Then you should build the foundation to throw out features and out and in. Yeah.
So I have a funny example for that one. This is kind of contra to my own vote here on Yay, but I know both of you have used the Bunch app and are fans of it. So I think it's a fun example. So for the Bunch app, for those who don't know, it's an AI leadership coaching app. So basically you get these 2-minute tips each day for how to be more successful as a leader. And in the early days, we took this sort of ship fast and iterate constantly thing to the extreme. So in the early days, the first version of the app that was actually available in the App Store, the backend for the app was Airtable. And it worked amazingly because you could also put content into Airtable and have it instantly appear in the app. And it was fantastic, except we had all of these cases that we hadn't covered, basically, such as if there was a missing piece of content, it would cause a lot of problems. So we had bullet points, actually, emoji bullet points in some places in the app. You probably have encountered these, summaries, for example. And if there was a missing emoji, the app would crash. So if there was a missing emoji in Airtable, then the app would be down on production. So this is, to your point, Paul, there are limits.
Was this in 2021, like October-ish 2021? Because if so, I think I encountered it. And I wrote a lot of messages.
I don't remember exactly when it would have been, but it could have been.
Yeah, because there was a time that my app was constantly crashing, and I had to reach out to the support.
Yeah, but there is also the other side of that, right? If you are super careful, especially if you have engineers that say, oh, we can't use Airtable because we need to have several layers of security and we need to make bulletproof application, then having the power to say, hey, look, we have just a handful of users, and if our app is crashing and someone like Gonch is starting writing us emails, and then I think you did a great job on that, answering to that emails and say, hey, thanks for the feedback, join our user testing and give us your feedback, then you turn frustrated users into fans, actually. And that is also
which is what happened.
For me too.
Yeah.
And of course, in the end, like we did have to kind of rebuild a lot on the technical side of things for more sustainable solutions. But I do believe, just going back to the initial question, I do believe it's very important to figure out what to do, validate it before you really invest in making it something that's going to be durable and last forever. It's always a bit of a hard thing to figure out where is the line. How careful do we want to be? But I think it's very important that you kind of push the limits there.
Yeah, exactly. So last statement, it's quite similar, so we don't need to go into as much detail, but An MVP should always be built before committing to a fully developed project feature, big feature. So not a small, tiny, not a changing of a color of a button, but a proper feature.
An MVP should always be built before committing. Yay-ish. I think if it's possible, it should be probably done. At least when I'm imagining kind of, not just a small feature, but like something big. I think it usually makes sense to build an MVP. The reason I hesitate a little bit is because I think people have very different ideas now, even about what do we mean when we say MVP,
Exactly.
There was a certain kind of like startup methodology, lean startup thing that almost kind of, almost gave the term MVP a bad name in a sense, because it almost implied that it would be like really bad.
Yeah.
And then you kind of had teams shipping really bad stuff, finding out that users don't like really bad stuff, and deciding the idea is not good. So I think it's a cautious yay, because I think there's you have to be careful. But I tend towards the yay side on this one.
Exactly. And I think here validation is important and learning from it is important.
Awesome. That is fantastic to get your perspective on these things. And we also learned already that you are diving into boxing and private life, maybe, or maybe also work related. We don't know. But what is one thing that is clearly more work related you are currently learning new?
Ooh, right now I'm actually learning and struggling with AI coding.
That's famous wipe coding.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't want to call it that, but yeah, basically I'm trying to learn how to vibe code. But I would say it's not going as well as I hoped it would. I've managed to create a couple of sort of functioning prototypes, but I would say most of the time is spent with me writing fix it in the chat with one of these tools. The one I was using most recently actually is it's called Lovable. Yeah.
Nice.
But the last thing I did actually was the last successful one was a very simple workout tracker, like a bench press tracker. So you could see how you're progressing over time, and so that was kind of fun. But yeah, I still have a long way to go as a vibe coder for sure.
Yeah, and it becomes more challenging because you need to learn new tools all the time, right? You can't master one tool because every day you have new ones. And I want to just suggesting one more, because since yesterday we have Firebase Studio available, and Firebase was already a very great product, and now you can vibe code it also and bother your engineering colleagues with stupid questions. Not working.
Yeah, sometimes I'm a little bit embarrassed with some of the questions I have to ask for help for some things, but it's been fun. And prompting in general is something always I'm trying to get better at, like writing good prompts, because I do sort of see that, there's the gulf is massive between like the results you can get using AI for, when you're really good at writing prompts versus if you're just kind of just starting out. So that's one thing that I'm trying to get better at as well.
Nice. That's amazing. And thank you so much, Kurtis, for joining us on your Friday morning, 8 a.m, joining us and recording this episode with us. We really appreciate it. And where can people find you? How can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn is usually the best place. So LinkedIn, it's Kurtis Morrison, Kurtis with a K. And that's probably where I most easily found, probably the most active as well, to be honest, as far as social goes.
Nice. Thank you.
Awesome.
And thanks for a great episode.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot.
It was an absolute pleasure.
Please don't forget to subscribe and invite all of your friends to subscribe to our LinkedIn page. Listen to this, like it, give it 5-star, send it to your friend who is into growth, into growing stuff. That would be really cool. Send it to your friends who are into growing stuff.
Maybe
and help us grow this podcast.
Grow. Product.
I want to leave it ambiguous. They can decide.
So maybe you get now even more diverse requests, Kurtis. Let us know how it goes.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.